Welcome, everybody. So, we're going to continue with what we were talking about last week. Oops, before I do that, I'm just going to turn off my phone. Do not disturb. There we go. Um, yeah, so we'll continue to talk about last week, or the tools that we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks. Tools that Dr. Rick Hanson has said. He's a neuropsychologist, and he assures us that these tools can really be helpful when our anxiety levels are high, which is really the case for a lot of the country today. And so I just want to start with the quote that I used in my email today that said, "Our anxiety does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows, but only empties today of its strengths." And this is so true when we think about it. And then Amanda Gorman's quote, which we talked about last week, but it bears repeating: "Anxiety is a living body poised beside us like a shadow. It is the last creature standing, the only beast who loves us enough to stay." And of course, this speaks so highly of anxiety. It can always be there to some degree. And so it's often the case that we're feeling a little bit anxious. But I think the anxiety level has really been peaking over the last while. And Rick Hansen also points out, interestingly enough, he says it's also really important to appreciate that sometimes people can become anxious about not feeling anxious. In other words, they're afraid, what's this feeling? This is so foreign to them. So when they're not afraid, they're kind of looking under every bush for what might jump out at them and get you. Because if you lower your guard, boom, things happen. And, it's a very understandable concern. But he says the remedy for it is to appreciate that two things can be true. You can be appropriately vigilant for actual threats outside of you or in your body or even in your mind, while at the same time having a sense of capability. That inner calm that we've been speaking about, that we've been building, strength and ease as you manage these various threats. And that's really what we're talking about here. So remembering also that so often our anxiety is caused by our thoughts. And when we put our thoughts into perspective, our anxiety level goes down. And I love this story that I was recently reading in a book called Gateway to Happiness by Rabbi Zelig Pliskin. It was published all the way back in 1983. And he talks about a coworker who always brought jelly sandwiches from home to lunch, or a worker. And a coworker always heard him mutter to himself when he opened his sandwich, "Oh no, it's a jelly sandwich again. I hate jelly." And so finally the coworker asked him, "Why don't you tell your wife to make you a different kind of sandwich?" And his response was, "Oh, my wife doesn't make the sandwiches, I make them." And so Rabbi Pliskin points out that a person who makes himself miserable by repeating negative thoughts to himself is acting just as foolishly as this worker and his jelly sandwiches. We needlessly make ourselves miserable. And so this is an important remembrance, to say to yourself, the jelly sandwich, right? There comes that jelly sandwich thought. And then it also reminded me of a comment that I heard made by one of our politicians, Adam Schiff from California, recently when he was asked by an announcer something about his relationship with Mr. Trump. Was it troublesome to him? And he said, "No, no, not at all. He doesn't pay rent in my head." And I thought, good for you. This is really a powerful way to really check in with ourselves and recognize the effect of our thinking on our whole being, our whole mood, our whole affect. And so the fourth tool in the toolkit from Dr. Hansen is the paper tiger tool. And I'm sure you've all heard of a paper tiger, but most people, he says, move through their lives thinking that it's threat level orange, when objectively it could be threat level green or maybe just a drop of yellow to make it a little bit chartreuse. So, and he says, we overestimate the likelihood of bad events occurring and how bad it would feel, because this is one of the roots of our evolution, the evolution of our nervous system. He said our ancestors could make two mistakes. They could think that there was a tiger in the bushes about to pounce, some kind of bad thing coming at them, when in fact there wasn't such a threat. Or the alternative mistake was to think that everything's fine, the coast is clear, when in fact there really was a tiger in the bushes about to jump. And of course, you know the rest of the story. What's the cost of the first mistake? Needless anxiety. What's the cost of the second mistake? No more mistakes forever, because that human was eaten by the tiger. So in effect, he points out that we evolved to be adaptively paranoid of paper tigers. And that's a good prescription for upping the odds of survival at significant cost to well-being in our own life. And there are situations today in which the paper tiger paranoia is actually really useful because it keeps us on our toes. So if we're doing a really huge project, it might be useful to have that kind of paper tiger paranoia, that we really cover everything thoroughly. But for most people, he suggests that it leads to needless anxiety and swerving away from opportunities with an overfocus on threats. So how do we overcome this? And he overcomes it, he says, by borrowing a simple and powerful tool from cognitive therapy that you can do as an experiential practice. And we're not going to do it today, but this is really about what our mindfulness practice is about, noticing our thoughts, noticing, number one, that they are mental formations, that they are not necessarily real. And then the troublesome thoughts, we can ask ourselves the question, is this a wrong thought? Is this right? Or is this just constantly rolling around in my head? I mean, we can think about politics today, where you can get yourself in a group and you start talking about politics and you can feel the level of anxiety rising. And so typically somebody will say, let's talk about something else. And so there's these situations where we're activated. And so it can be politics, it can be something in the moment, it can be driving a car, you can be at work, you can be speaking in front of a group. Whatever situation it might be that you might be in, you are revealing a vulnerability associated with a fear of a bad result. So he suggests that you write down your strengths and then remind yourself, well, wait a minute, before we do that, he talks about writing down the thought on one side of the page, and then on the other side of the page, you write down a rebuttal of the thought. And so this can be one or two rebuttals. So that can be an exercise that you can do to really kind of self-correct your own thinking. So we can you can remind yourself, like we've been doing in these exercises. The first suggestion from Dr. Hanson was that we can use our breath to calm ourselves. And so before you even do this exercise, I would suggest that you sit for a moment and you just sit and feel your breath, and then you can consciously expand your exhale. That expansion of the exhale activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and we automatically calm down. We automatically relax. And then you can think more clearly. So you can kind of take a look at that thought on the left side of the page and say, that's not necessarily true. And I do have strengths. I do have resources that I can use to counteract this. So using the calm the body first, and then going to tool number 4, I believe that is. Tool number 4, the paper tiger tool. So So, um, on to what we've reviewed so far. The first was to calm our body. Tool number one, calm the body. And we just talked about expanding the exhale, the diaphragmatic breathing. And when we engage the parasympathetic wing of the autonomic nervous system, it helps us settle down. And there's a reason why scientists call it the rest and digest portion of our autonomic nervous system. It's because it's involved in the regulation of digestion and the body. And so when we calm the body, the mind begins to calm. The prefrontal cortex comes back online so that we can think more clearly. And as we gain that greater sense of calm, we can deal with threats or challenges around us. We can move through our day easily, doing tasks, driving in traffic, even arguing with your teenager if that's the case. You can do all of these things from a place of greater calm. And the other breathing exercise that I want to remind you of is the 5-finger exercise, because this engages the breath and it engages a sense of touch and sight. And when we engage our senses, as we'll do in our meditation, the mind tends to calm down. And so for those of you who are new, there's a link in the chat box with that tool. It's Dr. Judd, and he talks about the neuroscience behind the 5-finger breathing, and I really encourage you all, if you're not practicing it, to really make it part of your toolbox. And then another way to calm down our nervous system and to bring down at the actual thought of threats or the overestimation of threats is to think about our strengths. Recall a time when you felt strong. Recall a time when you really endured something important and you made it work. And so feeling that sense of strength in your body and reminding yourself of all of the accomplishments that you have in your life to date. And this in itself will help you to feel more secure. So we can tap into this sense of strength anytime we like, and we can draw upon it as we deal with the things that are indeed challenging, reminding ourselves, I'm a strong person. I've really got this. And then the tool number 3 is to be aware of the various protections that we have in our life. We've got a roof over our head with walls to support that roof. We've got resources, credit cards, money, various objects that protect us, like a lock on our door, like a bolt, to protect us from intruders. We have friends in our life who would come to our plea for help if need be. We have access to medical care. Aren't we lucky and aren't we privileged? And so it's really important to remind ourselves of our strengths, of our resources. And this again will help the anxiety reduce and you feel more calm. And reminding yourself of a time when you really, really worried and that worry that you had didn't happen. And that's important too, to think about the number of times we worry about something and it doesn't really happen. Remind ourselves it really didn't do any good and it took away my joy. So relief and reassurance are easy to underestimate, and yet they are really important to us as vulnerable human beings and are a very sweet and emotional, very immediate way to feel safer and less anxious. And so let's do a meditation now, and we'll incorporate these practices into our meditation. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to start with our sensory awareness, because when we come into our sensory awareness, we decrease the level of thoughts. And so just opening your eyes and taking a look around the space that you're in. And again, reassuring yourself that this space is safe, that it has a roof, it has the walls, it has the furnishings. And the fact that within our homes, if you're working from home or you may be in the office, but we all have clothing. We all have plenty of resources to help us through life. And then if you like, you can close your eyes or you can cast them downward and just listen to the sound within your environment. And just without identifying where the sound is necessarily coming from, just notice the level, the pitch, the rhythm, and perhaps how those sounds all kind of merge together. And I encourage you to think about sound as sound rather than noise. Noise carries a negative connotation, whereas sound is pretty neutral. And so this is just sound. And now I'm going to ring the bell 3 times, and I am going to ask you to bring your attention to the sound of the bell and see if you can follow it until the sound dissolves. And as the sound dissolves again, bringing awareness to the sound in your environment. And now we'll shift to our sense of touch. The sound just touched our ears and registered in our brain. And now we'll feel the clothing that we have on our body. Notice how it touches our skin. And then we'll notice how our body touches other surfaces. Beginning with our feet, bringing attention and awareness like a flashlight all the way down to your feet, to feel the bottom of your feet, perhaps the warmth of the shoes or the socks that are on them, and the connection to the floor. And of course, the floor is connected to the ground eventually, and to the earth. And so acknowledging how gravity keeps us grounded, how Mother Earth supports us. Really feeling into that support. And then noticing how the chair that you're sitting in is supporting you as well. Bringing awareness into the touch point of your body touching the chair. Allowing your body to just release any tension. That's residual tension from the morning. We often carry it around needlessly. And if you can just soften the shoulders, allow them to droop a little lower. Soften the forehead, the tongue in your mouth, the jaw, the shoulders, the arms, letting them be supported by your body, your hands, the trunk of the body resting against the chair, allowing it to become heavier. Your legs and your feet resting, being supported. And then feel the touch of your skin, the touch of the air on your skin. If the air is cooler, you might be able to feel the coolness of the air. Or it may be so light it's not really discernible. But notice the touch of the air at the nostrils as your body draws the breath inward to breathe you. Notice the coolness of the breath. And then the warmth of the breath as the body releases it again. And I'm going to invite you to place your hands over your abdomen and just see if you can consciously feel the breath slower and deeper in your body as the abdomen expands and contracts with each breath. And just taking several breaths without changing anything. Just feeling the breath. And when we breathe in this way, we establish this center of calm, lower and deeper in our body, that's always there, no matter what we're encountering. A space we can go to. A space we can rely on. And then with your next exhale, letting the breath go through your lips very slowly, very consciously slowing it down. And as you do, bringing the abdomen back towards the spine until all of the breath has been evacuated from your lungs. And then breathing in through your nose, completely filling the lungs as the belly swells. When your lungs are filled, allowing the breath to go again through your lips, the belly comes back naturally towards the spine, and the breath is released until it's completely released. And taking one more full breath. And then releasing it again through your lips very slowly. The exhale should double the inhale, but you don't necessarily have to count. You can just elongate it if you like. And then just releasing your hands, relaxing, and breathing normally. And just notice any thoughts that are knocking around up in the mind. And just acknowledge them as mental formations. Just like the clouds, they come out of nowhere. And when we just let them go, they dissolve into nothingness, much like soap bubbles. So just watching this process of the mind generating thoughts, letting them go, coming back to the breath. And now thinking of the strengths that you have. Thinking of a situation that you're really proud of, that you really endured. You did a great job, and maybe it wasn't so easy, but you pulled through. And reminding yourself, I am strong. And with that reminder, sitting up a little bit straighter, feeling the strength and the expression in your face, in your shoulders, in your body. Breathing into this strength. Reminding ourselves, I am strong, I am resilient. And you might also use the mantra, in this moment, I do enough. In this moment, I have enough. In this moment, I am enough. As you continue to breathe, feeling your strength, and then reminding yourself of the resources that we are all privileged to have. A roof over our head, clothing in our closet, food in the refrigerator, transportation to get us around, In this moment, I have enough. And the beauty of friendship, never underestimating that we have probably relatives and friends that will come to our rescue if we need that. And so again, in this moment, I have enough. And continue to breathe this into your being, knowing I have this place of calm. This is always here for me. I have this strength. I have resources. And I have the capacity to view my thoughts, particularly the paper tiger thoughts, as simply thoughts, simply thinking. Mental formations that arise out of nowhere. Or perhaps they're activated by being too attached to the media, a media outlet. And then setting your intention to do less of that. Because our peace and our calm is precious. We have to protect it. And so setting your intention over the rest of the day, the rest of the week, to really protect yourself, to preserve that peace, that calm, that allows us to enjoy our days, to feel joy, to feel love for one another, to feel connected. And so, as we close the meditation, but before we do, setting your intention for this afternoon. And perhaps creating an intention of hope. Active hope is practiced by intention. Nobody can take away our hope. And so being hopeful for our own selves, for our own country, and asking the question, what are the values that I want to live through? And reminding yourself that we have choice. We always have choice. And so I'll ring the bell to end the meditation, simply bringing your mind to awareness of the bell as the vibrations come to your ears. And as you open your eyes, if it feels comfortable to you, smiling, because smiling activates the parasympathetic nervous system and we feel better. So if you can smile, so I want to make sure I'm just going to stop the recording if I can grab that. There we go. Okay, hang on here. There we go.